Thank you, Sora Scavella Hill. Good evening, SOAR boards, candidates, and guests. We welcome you to the fall edition of the Barbara Powell Johnson Monday Night Politics series. My name is Deborah Bynum Judkins, and I'm the co-chair of the Social Action Committee, and I will be your MC for this evening. Tonight, we are pleased to host candidates for delegate to the United States House of Representatives for a forum. We invited all the candidates running for this position, including the incumbent Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, who could not be with us tonight. The importance of the mid-year congressional elections cannot be overstated because of critical issues such as access to affordable health care, the economy, affordable housing, education, and DC statehood, to name just a few. Although Election Day is not until November 3rd, 2026, it is not too soon to learn about the candidates and hear their positions on issues of importance to the residents of the District of Columbia. As a reminder, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated is a 501c7 organization and does not endorse candidates or political parties. With that being said, I would like to acknowledge some very special guests that we have here tonight, our regional and state coordinators, and each of them will give some short remarks. So first, I'd like to acknowledge Soror Aaron Brown, who is the Eastern Region Social Action Coordinator. Soror Brown.
Good evening, SOARs, candidates, and to all guests who are under the sound of my voice, who are residents of Washington, D.C. I bring you greetings on behalf of the Eastern Regional Director, Dr. Marie Carmel Durandis Presley, and the Eastern Region Social Action Committee. It is my honor to join you for the Barbara Powell Johnson Monday Night Politics Virtual Candidates Forum for the DC Delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives. But before I continue, I do want to congratulate the Washington, D.C. Alumni Chapter for earning the 2025 Eastern Region Social Action Award for Large Chapter. Your chapter continues to lead with purpose, mobilizing voters across all 8 wards, advocating for D.C. statehood, advancing health equity, and standing firmly for civil and human rights. Thank you for your unwavering commitment to social justice in the district. Today's forum is a powerful example of Delta's national social action priorities in action. Voter and civic engagement are central to our mission, and events like this ensure that our community hears directly from candidates, understands their platforms, and makes informed decisions at the ballot box. To the candidates who have joined us this evening, thank you for being here and for offering your perspectives and solutions on the issues that impact the people of this great city the most. And to everyone attending, thank you for staying engaged. Our democracy is strongest when we show up, ask questions, and use our voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Soror Brown. Now I'd like to acknowledge Soror Tony McIntosh Harper, who is the DC State Coordinator. Soror Harper.
Good evening, everyone. Greetings to our candidates, our regional leadership, our the chapter president, Ms. Nicole Jordan, and our dedicated event organizers, and each of you joining us this evening. As the DC State Coordinator for Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, it is both my pleasure and my honor to welcome you to the Barbara Powell Johnson Monday Night Politics Presents, the Virtual Candidates Forum for DC Delegates to the U.S. House of Representatives. Voter registration is a signature program for Deltas everywhere, but our charge doesn't end there. We all know that elections have consequences. We have a responsibility to educate voters and hold our elected officials accountable. So thank you to the Washington, D.C. Alumni Chapter for leading with purpose and for creating spaces like this and for assuring our community is both informed and empowered. Let's stay engaged, ask the hard questions, and press forward with our votes and our voices. Thank you.
Thank you, Soror Harper. And last but not least, I'd like to acknowledge Soror Stephanie Hall, who is the DC Statewide Social Action Coordinator. Soror Hall.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As the Washington, D.C. Social Action State Coordinator, I want to thank each of you for your unwavering commitment to advocacy and civic engagement. Tonight's virtual candidates forum for the DC Delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives is an opportunity for us to continue the proud Delta legacy of informed political participation. Although DC does not have full voting representation in Congress, our delegate plays a crucial role in advancing the interests of our communities, protecting our rights, and amplifying the voice of the district on the national stage. It is essential that we evaluate each candidate's vision, priorities, and plans to address the issues that matter to us the most: education, health equity, economic justice, public safety, and of course, DC statehood. I encourage every community member to listen closely, ask thoughtful questions, and share what you learn with your networks. Our influence is powerful when we are informed and engaged. Thank you for showing up, for speaking up, and for the continuing charge of social action in the District of Columbia. Thank you all.
Thank you, sorors. Now it is my privilege to introduce Nicole Jordan, who is the president of the Washington, D.C. Alumni Chapter, and she will come and give greetings. Soror Jordan.
Great. Hello and greetings. I want to thank you on behalf of the Washington, D.C. Alumni Chapter for joining us today for our Barbara Powell Johnson Monday Nights Politics Virtual Candidacy Forum. We are grateful that you chose to spend time with us today and tonight. These are spaces where we come together to learn, to ask questions, and to grow, and it's essential that we do that. You've heard from all of our leaderships. I want to thank each of our regional leadership, our local leaders, all who have joined us today. Thank you for taking time to join us today. Together, tonight we gather not just to hear from candidates, but to deepen our understanding of the issues that are shaping Washington, D.C. and our residents every single day. This is our opportunity to listen directly to those who will represent us, to gain clarity on their priorities, and to consider how their leadership will align with the future that you envision for your city. So before we get started, I have to take a moment and just really honor Barbara Powell Johnson, who this series is named for. As a mother of our chapter, a beloved woman of the community, and a dear, dear mother figure to me. We would not be here because we were not standing on her shoulders. So I want to just honor her and thank her for starting this advocacy and making sure that we continue to do that. And most importantly, I want to thank our chairs, our award-winning chairs, Soror Janelle Henry, our co-chairs, Deborah Bynum Junkins and Nakisha Smalls, as well as all the members of the committee for doing insightful work, always thinking about how we can get engaged and how we can get people started. And to all those who are working in the background, making sure everyone's getting in the Zoom, the audio is working. Thank you very much. And most importantly, I want to thank each of you for being here. Like I said, events like this matter. You showing up tonight shows that there is a reason and you're here to do so. I want you to sit back and say, this is your event. Even though all of us are here talking, saying greetings and prepared words, this is your event. So we really want you to own it, ask hard questions, and really get out of this what you want. I also want to thank all the candidates for coming here this evening. Thank you for your willingness to participate and to engage in a dialogue and to your commitment for serving the residents of Washington, D.C. So we hope you gain some insight. We want to remind you that we are not here to endorse any candidate, but we are here to endorse you to vote. So the one thing you can do is out of here is to get as much information as you can because your vote matters, and that's what we want you to do. So thank you for tonight, and I will hand it back over to one of my beautiful sorors.
Okay, I will take it from here and introduce now our award-winning chair, Janelle Henry, who will bring greetings on behalf of the Social Action Committee.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, neighbors, friends, and community leaders. Welcome to tonight's Barbara Powell Johnson Monday Night Politics series. Again, I'm Janelle Henry, and I'm proud to serve as the chair of the Social Action Committee for the Washington, D.C. Alumni Chapter. We are, like Soror President said, we are especially honored to have with us tonight the namesake of our series, our past WDCAC president and tireless D.C. advocate, Barbara Powell Johnson, who's on the call tonight. We thank you so much for your dedication to keeping DC residents informed and engaged in the political process. And we want to give you your flowers tonight. We want to thank you for your service and your dedication. So if you guys can throw some hearts and flowers and claps in the chat, we are so happy that you can join us tonight. Our Monday Night Politics series serves as a crucial platform where DC residents, government officials, and community leaders can engage in meaningful dialogue about the issues that matter to us the most. So we're proud to host this virtual candidates forum as a way to introduce you, the community, the people that live here, to the candidates, and provide an opportunity to learn more about their stance on the key issues that are important to us. And this is part of Delta Sigma Theta's mission on voting, on civic engagement, and social action. So we thank you for taking some time out of your night to really educate yourself on a really key race. So I'm going to get out of the way because I know we want to hear from our candidates and turn things back over to my partner in service, my dynamic, awesome co-chair, Deborah Bynum-Junkins, who will introduce our moderator for tonight. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Hey, thank you, Soror Henry. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for the evening, Shelby Patterson. Shelby Nicole Patterson is a former teacher who transitioned to federal service as a public policy analyst. Her experience lies at the intersection of STEM education, grant management, and community engagement. When she is not supporting the mission to prepare the next generation of STEM education researchers and practitioners, she enjoys serving others through her first love, Delta Sigma Theta. Shelby is a proud Columbia, South Carolina native who has just as proudly called DC her home the last 4 years as a Ward 5 resident. She is also a proud member of the Washington WDCAC and enjoys meeting new people, discovering history, traveling, and dancing. So Soror Patterson, I turn the program over to you.
Thank you, Soror Junkins. The purpose of this candidate forum is to introduce the community to the candidates for the delegate to the United States House of Representatives. Although the primary election is not until June 16, 2026, it is not too early to begin educating ourselves about the candidates and their positions on issues important to the District of Columbia residents. We've invited all candidates for delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives tonight, and we're honored to have 10 of the 12 present with us. So let's get right into it. I'm going to introduce by name and title only, and then the candidates will, you'll be able to follow up with their bios with a link dropped in the chat. Following introductions, we will then hear from candidates and what their positions are, and a little bit about their background on why they're running. And then we'll follow with Q&A and then questions from the audience. Tonight we have with us Deirdre P. Brown, Chair, Ward 3 Democratic Party, Kamon Freeman, co-founder of We Act Radio, Robert L. Matthews, leader in Child and Family Services, Greg May, Thank you. Greg May, founder, Stand Up for DC, Dr. Jock Patterson, president and at-large representative for the DC Board of Education, Brooke Pinto, DC Council Member, Ward 2, Brian Reddy, Executive Director, Barracks Row, Main Street, Robert White, DC Council Member at Large, Kelly Michael Williams, Chairman, ANC 8E, and we have Kenny Zalesny, DNC official. We'll begin with candidate short statements about their background and their reasons for running. Please limit yourself to 2 minutes. Thank you, candidates. Candidate Brown.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening. My name is Deirdre Brown. I'm running to be your next delegate to the United States House of Representatives. I'm a third-generation Washingtonian whose family story is rooted in service and hard work. My grandmother attended Miners Teachers College in the 1940s when most doors were closed to Black women. She became a social worker. My mother spent her career in federal service. From them, I learned that leadership is not about titles, it's about service and community and showing up. I didn't come from a wealthy family. I came from a working class DC family, grounded in sacrifice and community, and everything I've achieved has come from hard work. I'm the oldest of 4, raising my own children here in the city that raised me. As a former ANC commissioner, I fought for my neighbors, and as a chair of the Ward 3 Democrats, I work to strengthen democratic participation and ensure residents feel heard and included. My training at the UDC David A. Clark School of Law, a law school rooted in public service and community advocacy, deepened my commitment to equity and taught me how to use the law to protect people, not systems. My housing advocacy reflects that commitment. As the vice chair of the Northwest Opportunity Partners, CDC, I've worked to expand affordable housing and expose the racial and economic disparities to shape our housing system. Through my work with the Committee of 100, I pushed for zoning equity so that affordability isn't optional but expected. And as co-chair of the Legislative Committee of the Metropolitan Women's Democratic Club, I've advocated for families, seniors, and longtime residents trying to remain in the communities they love. I am running for delegate because DC cannot afford to stand still. At a time of rising costs, federal interference, and threats to our autonomy, our next delegate needs to be someone who organizes, advocates, and leads. Someone rooted in this community who has been doing the work, not speaking about it only at election time. I'm not backed by wealth, political legacy, or big donors. I'm backed by the community that raised me, and that is who I will fight for in Congress. Thank you for the opportunity and look forward to speaking with you tonight.
Thank you. Candidate Freeman?
Yes, good evening. So honored to be here with you as the Delta is my favorite sorority and as one of the many young people who were mentored by Dr. Dorothy Irene Height. She will always say that if the time is not right, you must ripen the time. And I think it's time that we have a complete change in our leadership and where we go from here. WDCAC Radio has been here for 14 years, speaking truth to power during that time, and we have changed the course of so much legislation. I think also I'm bold to say that I'm probably the DC delegate candidate has spent the most time on the Hill, whether it's the Senate side, whether it's the House side, whether it's fighting the big beautiful bill, whether it's bird dogging and challenging people like outgoing Senator Joni Ernst, to Representative Tim Burchett, who are all been on viral videos when I'm confronting them on Capitol Hill. But we need to talk about the crisis that we are in the midst of right now. I'm sharing a quote from Milton Friedman, who's not necessarily an ally of the progressive movement, but even a broke clock is right 2 times a day. He said, during a crisis, our basic functions develop alternatives to existing policies to keep them alive and available until the politically impossible is the politically inevitable. And I think it's inevitable that after 4 decades of home rule that we change course here, because DC statehood has been elusive, and we are no longer going to be able to assume that working with the forces that be and the powers that be, that they're going to grant us that right. So I say that if we don't have statehood, then we should not be paying federal income taxes, because we have seen Donald Trump weaponize federal budgets to force capitulation and acquiescence of our leaders, including our mayor, who he has deemed one of his favorites now, has been complimentary. In fact, Laura Ingraham on Fox News said that Muriel Bowser is the best mayor DC has ever had. So that's the leadership that we have, and it's time to change course if we're going to actually see equity in our community here at the nation's capital. And I think it's time that we flip tables like Jesus and fight fire with fire. And we need activists in these spaces and not another politician.
Thank you. Candidate Matthews?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Robert L. Matthews. I'm a Powell Ward 7 resident. I'm the former child welfare director here in Washington, D.C. over Child and Family Services during the Bowser administration. And during that time, I know coming out of the pandemic, I was the 69th D.C. One Fund chair, raising over $1 million for local nonprofits. Coming out of the pandemic, when many of their doors had to close, a lot of this money helped some of those mom and pop nonprofits that stand in the gap where most families go get their assistance. I've also secured $9 million to the Doris Duke Foundation, where that $9 million has gone to help families as they need food assistance, as they need clothing assistance, all of the things that's needed during this time, during the government shutdown. A lot of that money has been used to help those families. I've also been the director that also saw Child and Family Services out of a 32-year lawsuit. There were 3 agencies under a federal consent decree, and out of my 11 years being at CFSA, that happened on my watch. One of the reasons why I'm really running is because I've heard from many candidates talk about, there's time for new blood, there's time for new energy, and I believe that. When you're looking at the political landscape today, it's different than 20, 30 years ago. The Republicans had Project 2025. I believe the Democrats need Project 2028. And at the top of that list should be DC statehood. We're in this position because we've not had the autonomy to control our budget. We've not had the autonomy to make laws, and we have been overtaken by the federal government. So one of my things for 2028 is to have Project 2028, to have DC statehood, among all of the other things in terms of empowering our economy through tech and innovation, ensuring that our communities are safe, and strengthening our communities.
Thank you. Candidate May, I believe, is not present. Candidate Greg May. We will go to you, Dr. Patterson.
Hey, Jacques, you need to.
You are
You're
muted.
muted. Sorry.
Unmute. Okay.
It's okay.
I'll start again.
I'll restart your clock.
Thank you. Good evening to the hardworking women of Delta Sigma Theta. I am Dr. Jacques Patterson. It is an honor to be here with you. I am a father, a husband, a veteran of 29 years, a proud alpha man, and the state board president of education. This run for delegate is 30 years in the making. It wasn't a decision because of the political winds and me trying to decide which office to run for, nor will this race be funded by high dollar donors. I arrived here 30 years ago as a single father with my daughter, who was spoken of earlier. And I needed to make sure that she had a safe place to be, schools, community, and everything. As a proud Ward 8 resident, I immediately went to work as an ANC. I served 5 terms as an ANC. I also was selected to be a Capital City Fellow under former Mayor Williams. And that's when I started to get true government experience. And I spent a number of years there. I've been on boards and commissions and appointed by various mayors throughout my 30-year tenure. I've also had the opportunity to serve on different boards for our schools, along with one of your Soras, Monica Evans. So I've been rooted in community, and this whole campaign is rooted in the community voice and experience, 30 years of that experience. And I'm running because this is the most dire we've ever seen in our nation's capital since the institution of home rule, because we know we're facing an administration that is bent on turning back the clock to pass to the 1960s, basically, before the civil rights. Everything that we've fought for, our parents have fought for, is being undermined and taken away or dismantled. So I'm running for that particular reason because I know the consequences of policy. I have a doctorate in policy. And I know that what is being done to our city, to our country, is detrimental to our community. So I'm running to make sure that we have a delegate on the Hill who understands and is tried and tested in this community, in the history of this city, in the culture of this city, so that I can fight for this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Pinto.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Great to be with you all. My name is Brooke Pinto. I'm the Ward 2 council member. And I'm really running to accomplish 4 goals. I'm running to fight for our autonomy. I'm running to fight for our families, to fight for a fair economy that works for everyone, and to fight for our public safety. And I think all 4 of those goals are fundamental to having successful lives in a successful city. And I've really developed and built a track record on all of these issues over the course of my whole career, whether that was when I was working in the Senate, whether that was in the Attorney General's office, working for Carl Racine as the Assistant Attorney General for Policy and Legislative Affairs, and now as the Ward 2 council member and chairwoman of the council's Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety. I have led transformative efforts to revamp and plug the gaps of many issues in our public safety system. I moved the largest public safety omnibus bill in our city's history called Secure DC, which had over 100 different interventions in it to prevent violence, to hold perpetrators of violence accountable, to improve the gaps in coordination between the local and federal government. Just this summer, I moved another omnibus called Peace DC, which similarly had dozens of different interventions in it to support the entire life cycle of an individual in our public safety system, and to support folks once they return from serving a sentence with additional employment and housing opportunities. I've done this when we've supported our education system, revamping our literacy training with bills and reforms that I funded. My bill to ban cell phones from the classroom, making sure that all of our students have the support they need to learn to read and to be engaged with one another. And what I've found over the last 6 months in dealing with this administration and dealing with a hostile Congress is that all of those bills, my bills that I introduced and championed have become the backbone of our strategy in defending the district's right to home rule, because it is not only that they should back off and allow us to run and operate our own city. To some members of Congress, they need to know the substance of what we are doing locally, even though it is not fair that they should have to know that. That's the situation that we're in. And it's these bills, my bills, Secure DC, Peace DC, literacy investments, our recent juvenile curfew emergency. These are the backbone of what is protecting the district right now in our conversations and advocacy around the Hill. And I'll also just say that as I seek to take on this role on your behalf, I think it is really important that we not just play defense when it comes to the attacks that are coming against our city to protect ourselves from these unwanted incursions, but it's also important that we play offense and we think big picture about how else we can lean into additional supports that our residents and our local businesses need right now for their opportunities. And just this morning, I introduced my Prosper DC plan, which includes 20.
Thank you,
all around
Councilwoman
economic prosperity.
Pinto.
Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate ready?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Brian Reddy. I am running to be our next actual U.S. shadow representative. I'm actually not running for the delegate. I did let everyone know ahead of time, but I'm happy to still be here. The shadow representative actually is here to bolster, of course, what the delegate is already doing. We want to make sure that we are supporting them and our shadow senators as much as possible. DC, of course, we deserve equal representation. We've seen exactly what has happened to the district. There was a video that Barack Obama did that posted talking about the dangers of what the Trump administration was doing and how it would affect states and the power that they would have. The unfortunate thing, that is what happens here in the district. That is what has happened here in the district. It's time, of course, for us to have full control over our state. And it's time for me to get involved in this. And that's what I'm here for. I'm here to get involved in making sure that we can get statehood. I have been working with Bertro as the executive director, making sure we develop partnerships with different national organizations, such as the National Main Street Coalition, the Restaurant Association, and working with different representatives throughout the area, such as the Nevada Representative Titus, Representative Ford, making sure that we can develop these partnerships with different entities to make sure that we can coalesce together to work on a plan to actually get together and get statehood. We cannot necessarily do this alone. We're going to have to get a coalition, be it force or by niceness. We're going to have to get a coalition of states and other powerful people together to sit there and write us a statehood. And I'm here to work on that, making sure we get that. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate White, Councilmember White.
Thank you so much and good evening, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Thank you so much for hosting this forum and for all the work that you all do in the city. Deltas make a lot of noise in the Wilson building, which I love. I was born right here in DC. I'm a proud graduate of Archbishop Carroll High School and American University Law School, but more importantly, I am a product of our city. I grew up tagging along with my mom as she cleaned other people's houses and watched my father struggle to make ends meet when my mom passed away when I was 8. I've seen firsthand the struggles that families go through just to survive, and I still see it in my family today. That's why I've made it my mission to serve this city and why I've spent the last 9 years on the DC Council fighting for everyday DC residents. I've led the charge on affordable housing, workforce development, and investments in education, not with press releases, but with results. I wrote laws that made it easier for returning citizens to get jobs and housing. I've helped seniors stay in their home, pushed down the cost of housing, and I've expanded mental health services because I know what we need to do to help everyday people in this city. And now I want to do the same thing in Congress. Before I worked on the DC Council, I spent years on Capitol Hill as legislative counsel to Congresswoman Norton, a mentor whom I love and respect. When I am in that seat, I will make sure no one forgets what our warrior on the Hill has done for us for the past 35 years. But I'll also make sure that seat serves the challenges we see today. federal agents dragging people from our streets, armed guard troops in our communities, federal workers under attack, and the city's very autonomy under attack. I will protect DC families and communities. As we look to the first transition in this seat in 35 years, we need someone who knows this city. We need someone who knows the power of this seat and how to use it. We need someone who knows what it is to fight. And as a kid who wasn't supposed to make it, I know how to fight. I want to make sure that we are protecting DC families even without a vote. So I'm running to be our fighter. I'm Robert White. I'm running for Congress, and I am asking for your vote.
Thank you. Candidate Williams.
Good evening, ladies of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight, so thank you so much for having me. Again, my name is Kelly Michael Williams. I'm an ANC commissioner, and I'm a small business owner of the Strand Restaurant, and I'm also a single father who survived homelessness with my son. Today, that young boy is now a graduate of NYU University and is studying in London, England to get his master's degree. I'm also a parent of a proud daughter who is lieutenant commander in the US Navy, and she also has her master's degree in public health. One of the most important things for me in this race is the homeless crisis, because I take that personal. When you had people getting arrested on the streets, that was something personal to me. It's one of the many lived experiences that has guided my commitment to this public service that I've been in. I also spent the last 13 years of taking care of my mother, excuse me, my mother who suffered from Alzheimer's and dementia. I was her caregiver. And through that experience, I learned exactly what healthcare is all about and how important it is. But I also recognized that it was more than just about being in the hospital bed, it was about our dignity. And one of the things that I realized is that I'm not running for this seat just because I've been able to get better or do things better. But for the most part, I'm running for this seat because many of you have had it worse off than you've had it better. So right now, what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to make sure that we can afford healthcare. When my mother was sick, if you couldn't afford healthcare when she was sick, you certainly can't afford it now. And as you struggle to make payments for our housing, if you couldn't afford housing, a few years ago, you certainly can't afford it now. So with all due respect, as someone who survived homelessness, housing must be a moral imperative because our families deserve a safe and secure place to live at night. And I'm fighting for three things. I'm fighting for healthcare, I'm fighting for housing, and I'm fighting for home rule. Because it's real simple. Without healthcare, there is no dignity. I found that out firsthand, taking care of my mother. Without housing, there's no stability. Something else I know very personally, because I couldn't move or think about anything when I was homeless. And without us being able to strengthen our home rule, we will not be able to accomplish the others. So Shelby, tonight is the reality is this, is that if we don't have the autonomy to govern ourselves and have the solutions that are for us and by us, at the end of the day, it's about us. So we have to make sure that we can do what we can to go up there and fight. I'm going to Capitol Hill to fight because I know that we have a vote in Congress. We have the ability to vote in our legislative and committee, and we can even vote on the floor at times when the speaker allows us to. So I'm going to Congress because not only do I have 25 years of experience from the federal, the state, the local, and as an ANC commissioner and federal government and state government, local government, and now at the grassroots level, I have the ability to go up there and change what we need to have and do it with the power of making sure that we can coalesce people, but we're going to stand up and fight. We're not going to sit back any longer like we've been doing the last,
Thank
few
you,
years
Chairman
here.
Williams.
We're going to go after it. So thank you very much, Shelby, and I look
Thank
forward to
you.
all the questions.
Candidate Zalesny.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for hosting this forum. My name is Kinney Zalesny. I'm running for Congress to represent DC because America is in the greatest danger of my lifetime, and DC is on the front lines. I've been in and around politics for a long time. I worked in the Clinton White House. I was counsel to Janet Reno at the U.S. Justice Department. I was president of a nonprofit in Adams Morgan that's helped thousands of DC kids become the first in their family to go to college. And in this last presidential cycle, I was a Deputy National Finance Chair at the DNC, and I was National Co-Chair of Women for Kamala Harris. It was a great privilege to work for her, and it was deeply devastating when we lost that election. And I could see very quickly that this second Trump term was going to be far more dangerous and more ruthless than the first term. And I realized no one is coming to save us. We have to be the leaders we wish we had. So I'm running.
Thank you. Candidate May.
Good evening. Apologies for my technical difficulties. But with that, I'd like to thank everyone for hosting, and I'd like to jump right into it. My name is Greg May. I'm running for DC Delegate because I think now we're realizing that no democracy can survive lawlessness at the top and injustice at its core. I'm running to take immediate action to remove a lawless, ineligible president and finally secure DC statehood as a vital step toward restoring representative democracy for all. Despite clear constitutional prohibitions, insurrectionists currently sit atop our government, and although the injustice of taxation without representation has been recognized since our country's founding, it remains the daily reality of the citizens of the nation's capital. These may appear to be separate issues. They are not. They stem from the same disregard for democratic principles, and together threaten the survival of what was always meant to be a republic. At this point, the criminality of this administration should no longer be in dispute, nor should the unjust dictatorial relationship Congress maintains with DC citizens. In both cases, what's missing isn't evidence. It's the creativity, the courage, and the coordination to act. Irreparable harm is being done daily. Waiting for the next election is not enough. That's why I intend to take action during the election, not just after. I'll use this platform to outline our plan to remove this presidency under the clear plan. So I encourage everyone, whether you're voting for me or anyone else, to support the immediate action that Congress can take in the minority by visiting demandtheclearplan.com.
Thank you. At this time, we want to move into our issue questions. We have 3. We'll start with DC statehood, move to cuts to the DC budget, finish up with education. The round after that will focus on questions solicited from the audience. A few reminders. I am not able to answer or respond to messages directly sent to me. And also, please keep in mind that there will be a survey at the end and a candidate's research page with full bios. Thank you. Recent events, such as the deployment of the National Guard and on the streets of DC and the federal takeover of the Metropolitan Police Department, have intensified the calls for DC statehood. What is your position on DC statehood? And as a delegate to the United States House of Representatives, what actions will you take to advance DC statehood? We will begin with candidate Zelezny.
Okay, great. Sorry, I didn't know we were going in reverse alphabetical order. Okay.
We know that you need to leave early, so we wanted to start with you.
Oh,
give
no.
you an
Okay.
opportunity.
All good. No, I'm here till the end. Okay. Thank you.
Also, please remember to limit your response, candidates,
Yes.
all of you, please, to 1 minute this time. Thank you.
Okay. It is a stain on all of America that there are 700,000 of us in DC who do not have the same rights as every other American. We pay more in federal taxes than 19 states, and we pay more per person in federal taxes than anyone in the country, and yet Congress can still overrule our laws. That is not democracy, that's disenfranchisement. No other democracy on earth denies the residents of its capital city the right to vote in the national legislature. This is a product of racism, and it needs to end. To get there, we need a stronger, smarter coalition, not just inside Congress, but across the country. We have to make DC statehood part of the larger fight for democracy and civil rights, uniting cities and states across the country that believe that every American deserves equal representation. That's how we build the power to finally make DC the 51st state.
Candidate Brown?
Thank you for the question. We know that DC statehood is not just a political goal. It's a civil rights issue and a basic matter of democratic fairness. More than 700,000 people live in the nation's capital, pay taxes, serve in the military, fulfill every obligation of citizenship, but yet remain without full representation and vulnerable to federal overreach. Reaching events like the National Guard deployment and the federal surge in our streets are exactly why we need statehood now. As delegate, my role is to organize, legislate, and build national coalitions for statehood. I will work with supportive members of Congress to reintroduce and advance H.R. 51, increase bipartisan co-sponsorships, and ensure statehood is part of every negotiation that touches democracy, voting rights, or federal oversight. I will also mobilize residents and national partners and grassroots organizations because statehood has always moved forward when the people demand it. DC deserves full rights, full representation, and full control over our government, and I will fight for that every single day as your delegate. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Freeman?
Thank you. I think it's important to point out that when Barack Obama was president and the Democrats controlled both the House and the Senate, DC statehood was not on their agenda. So this is denying DC statehood is a bipartisan issue. When we had President Jimmy Carter on Tom Hartman, the #1 progressive talk show host here only on WDCAC radio here in Washington, D.C., he said that America is not a democracy. It is an oligarchy with unlimited political bribery. DC statehood is a national issue that could tip the balance of power in the stalemate that preserves the status quo in this country. And as I said in the outset, no DC statehood, no federal income taxes. Guam, Puerto Rico, they are also non-voting delegates in Congress. Neither of them pay federal income taxes. And as it was said earlier, not only do we pay more federal income taxes in several states and more per capita, but we are also subsidizing countries like apartheid Israel that has free healthcare, subsidized housing, subsidized education. And we are sitting here asking, begging, pleading for 4 decades for them to do the right thing. It's not going to change. The definition of insanity is continue to do the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. So I say, no statehood, no federal income taxes.
Candidate Matthews?
I think it's important that we understand the political climate that we're in. And so in my previous comments, I mentioned that the Republicans had a Project 2025. That Project 2025 was decades in the making. So that's why if you see in the current 11 months with the accelerated rate that the Trump administration has been able to move very quickly, because they've had a very planful agenda. The reason why I said Project 2028 and that DC statehood needs to be at the top of the list, because I'm probably the only one that realizes that we're going to do something different. I am for if we have a Democratic president, Senate, and Congress to pull the filibuster, because I think that's the only way we're going to be able to fight fire with fire. We're continuing as a Democratic Party to live by the rules, and we can see that Republicans are not abiding by the rules and by the norms that have governed how we do things. So we really do have to take the fight. Someone said earlier about being on the offense. That's the way to be on the offense, but we also have to build a bigger coalition, not just with DC residents, but to build a coalition at the national level and at the Hill.
Thank you. Candidate May?
Yes, I think that to move forward with DC statehood, it's definitely the case that we have to change our approach. I have a plan that spells it out, which starts with educating, unseating, boycotting, and litigating. To be honest, I think the fundamental problem here is something that has to go through the court system. In fact, what we've been waiting for is basically a democratic system or pure democracy. And we've been asking for politicians to vote on whether or not we can have our constitutional rights. This is something that needs to go through the court system. Pure democracy is mob rule. The difference is that we have guardrails of a constitution, and that constitution is being misinterpreted. So I think that an all hands on deck approach and different types of strategies have to happen at the same time, but ultimately we'll have to take this to the courts. And to do that, we also have to start by clearing the courts and our current leaders of our government, because they are ineligible to hold office to start with. So hoping that we win all the different seats and then get the adjustment we're asking for is unrealistic, I think.
Thank you. Candidate Patterson.
Thank you for the question. And first, I'll say that each one of these questions probably deserve more than 1 minute. So I'm going to ask you to go to my website, which is jacquespattersonfordc.com, where you can get a more explained answer to these questions. But it says there, I have 3 things that I'm going to focus on as we move towards statehood. That's protect our budget, defend home rule, and move towards statehood. And how do we do that? First and foremost, we need to make sure that what happened previously, the $1.1 billion that was taken out of our budget, that does not happen again. So we need budget autonomy, and we need to fight for that budget autonomy, and that's what I'm going to do. Secondly, we need to control our National Guard. They are literally using our home rule charter against us. As a person who actually served in the military, I understand what we're trained for and what we're not trained for. And being on the streets of our city is not what we're trained for. So I want to make sure that we have control of our National Guards like governors in other states. And finally, to make sure that we move towards statehood is to work with the CBC. DC and our delegate has been one of the first people to be part of the CBC. We need to make sure of that and keep that, and then work with those people in the CBC in their particular district to start explaining and educating them what we need as a state, the protection that we need. We need to stop just trying to talk about statehood here in the District of Columbia and take it on the road with those who have been friendly to us in Congress. So
thank you. Candidate Pinto.
Well, thanks so much. And thank you all for your work to advance statehood. It is so important as we continue to build this coalition nationwide. I think the Deltas are really central to continuing to get the word out and making sure that everyone across the country can see themselves in this fight and recognize that this is a fight for all Americans. It is absolutely vital that we secure statehood. There are a couple ways that we need to continue advancing towards it. One first step is we need to secure the right to vote in the full House. Now, I do think there is a lot of leverage and power in this position and introducing bills and working in committee and can chair committees and vote in committee, but we need to secure the right in the full House. And one of the strategies that I want to continue building on is what Congressman Walter Fauntroy did, which was really build coalitions across the country and helping people in other states advocate to their representatives about why statehood is important. And I see a path here. I used to do this at the Attorney General's office and speaking with audiences across the country about why statehood matters, and that the mindset is shifting. We have Democratic allies now who see why this fight is so important, and we need to continue that momentum.
Thank you. Candidate Reddy.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So statehood is simply, it's long overdue and it's a moral imperative. We've seen the National Guard committed to our streets without the consent of our local leaders, without the consent of the citizens. It is appalling. It cannot happen anymore. Like I mentioned earlier, what we really need to do is focus on national coalition building. There are multitudes of different agencies or different groups that are together that we've already got membership in and actually goodwill in that we can strengthen, such as, like I mentioned earlier, the National Main Street Association. They're present in 50 different states. We're dealing with small businesses. Small businesses are the lifeblood of our nation. They have a lot of influence on multiple different leaders, be it them Republican, be it them independent, be it the Democrat. We should leverage that. We need to look at the National Restaurant Association. There are restaurants everywhere. We are a foodie city. Using some of our great influence that we have in the restaurant industry to sit there and push statehood is another thing. Also, we have to look at what's going on in other states. Western states are a great example. Western states are controlled by the Bureau of Land Management. They have a similar situation where they're not happy. We're dealing with a lot of conservatives that happen to be in there. Being able to try to figure out a way of negotiating with them to get more control from the Bureau of Land Management over to these states would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Candidate White.
Thank you for this question. And if everybody's life is like mine, then you're probably multitasking right now. So I'm going to ask you for 1 minute because this is so important. We are, believe it or not, closer to statehood in DC than we have ever been, certainly in my lifetime. The redistricting battles that started in Texas are now raging across the country. This offers DC an opportunity we've never had before. For decades, DC statehood was important to DC residents, but it didn't impact anyone outside of DC, so it always fell flat. But now our very democracy is under attack, and people across the country know what's at stake and understand that DC becoming a state means 2 Democratic senators, which will shift the balance of power for the next decade. This is our window of opportunity and exactly why we need someone experienced at the helm. And I'm not just asking for your vote tonight, I'm also asking for your partnership. Because after we win the primary election in June, I'm asking every DC resident to give a day, a week, or a month helping to save our city by joining me in swing states and swing districts to win back Democratic control of Congress, because that is the single most important thing we can do to protect our city from the last half of Trump's term.
Thank you. Candidate Williams.
Thank you, Shelby. Appreciate the question. I think when we look at DC statehood, we have to look at the missed opportunities that we've had. And I have a 3-pronged approach. And first of all, it's going to talk about strengthening home rule, something we should have done in 2020 when we got the presidency and the House. We should have gone in and strengthened that because our mayor didn't have control over the National Guard, and we were already being impeded by Trump at that time. So first thing we're going to do is strengthen home rule, make sure our mayor has the authority over the National Guard, remove the provisions that allows Trump to federalize our local police department in our city. Then I think next we go to a part where we create the legislation to allow us to have a similar way of Puerto Rico, as I think Kimon talked about, Puerto Rico and Guam, Commonwealth, where we can have our own autonomy of our budget and be able to sustain our own budget. And then finally, lobby. We have to go nationwide because over 54% of the country now and 19 states agree that we should have statehood. And I think that we need to get out of DC and get across the country and start lobbying so we can get the simple majority vote that we need to be able to get statehood. And I'll be the champion of that because as a delegate, that would be my job, to make sure that we have our home rule, our healthcare, and our housing, so that we can make sure that we have the autonomy over our budget and everything else we need to do to make sure that the residents of the district have a successful and a fruitful lifespan.
Thank you. I'd like to remind attendees that you can put your questions in the Q&A section of the Zoom. We'll move to issue 2 now, cuts to the DC budget. As witnessed in fiscal year 2025, Congress passed a continuing resolution that omitted a key provision, allowing DC to spend under its local FY 2025 budget. This forced DC to revert its local spending to FY 2024 levels, creating a projected shortfall of approximately $1.1 billion. Although the Senate passed the bill to restore this funding, the House did not act. The city was forced to implement a hiring freeze and restrict overtime pay. Recognizing that the delegate position does not have a vote in Congress, as a delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives, what actions would you take to prevent future cuts, such as this, to the DC budget? We'll start with candidate Zelezny.
Great, thank you. No other citizens of America have to ask Congress for permission to spend their own locally raised dollars. This is unfair, it's undemocratic, and it hurts real people, teachers, first responders, families who depend on city programs to work every day. I have been in touch with some of the sitting members of the House of Representatives who have come to DC's defense. Jamie Raskin from Maryland, Suhas Subramaniam from Northern Virginia, to talk about how we make sure this never happens again. Suhas in particular sits on the House Oversight Committee, which is the committee that needs to lead this fight, and I look forward to joining him on that committee. As your DC representative, I will stay on top of every committee action, every move, every maneuver they try to make to put our budget in jeopardy. And I will work with the mayor and DC council to come up with our own moves and maneuvers to position DC to not only protect our budget, but to get every federal dollar we're entitled to. We need budget autonomy.
Thank you.
It's one of our biggest fights.
Thank you. Candidate Brown.
Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't reconnect here. So on this issue, as we see with the FY 2025 crisis, we've seen how DC's budget autonomy has been affected by not having statehood. Congress used our budget as a bargaining chip. Our residents paid the price through hiring freezes and cuts to essential services. Even without a vote, the delegate has real tools. We just need to use them. First, we need to work to build bipartisan relationships on the Appropriations and Oversight Committee, where most of the decisions are made. The delegate can influence coalition building, ensuring that other members are ready to defend DC where harmful riders appear. And secondly, we can publicly expose and organize against any attempt to undermine our local budget. When Congress knows there will be a political consequence and national attention, they will back down. Third, I will push for permanent budget autonomy legislation so DC's locally raised dollars cannot be held hostage ever again. DC should never have to beg Congress to spend our own money. My job as a delegate is to protect our residents, defend our local authority, and make sure this kind of federal interference never happens again. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Freeman.
Yes, we need to promote a
I'm
climate.
sorry, guys. What's
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, is there a question?
I'm sorry, I'm hearing voices. I got the floor.
Yes, go ahead, Candidate Freeman.
Thank you. As I was saying, we need to promote a climate of disruption. A lot of people are familiar with Martin Luther King's last speech, but they're not as familiar with his next to his last speech, which was delivered right here in Washington, D.C., March 31st, 1968. He said in that speech that far too often people find themselves living in periods of great social change, yet they fail to develop the new ideas and the new mental responses that the new situation demands. They end up sleeping through a revolution. I submit to you that's the quintessential definition of stay woke, which is why our enemies have turned that into a pejorative. And I think we need to acknowledge that we are in the midst of that right now. Otherwise, this colonial mentality and approach that Congress has over DC and their affairs, denying us autonomy over our own resources, will continue. We need to promote a culture of disruption. And I think, again, that taxation without representation, the very issue that this country went to war and was founded on, needs to be brought to bear and needs to be addressed, and we need to implement it now.
Thank you. Candidate Matthews.
When we think about the things that happened in terms of the Congress basically taking $1.1 billion of our taxpayer dollars, we have to do a better job at communicating its impact. And I'm talking down to just the level of a person, to where if you call 911, if there's a delay, there's a reason. If you are looking for food, you know, there's a delay there because there's lack of funds there. When we're talking about affordable housing and having people trying to get in homes, it all has an impact, and we have to do a better job in communicating the lack of funds and what it does. And then what does the local government have to do to try to make that up, right? And so, but part of that is being on the Hill, being able to build what I call a bipartisan coalition. This hasn't been done before, at least to my knowledge. And so, meaning that it is an anomaly. It's happening because things are now weaponized at the federal level, and they're doing so for political gain. And so you do need someone on the Hill that also is going to work across the aisle, whether we like it or not, because we're going to need allies, we're going to need friends. And we do that in support of ensuring that DC has the support it needs. So you got to have someone that's able to talk with, I would say Republicans that understand what needs to happen, because they also live in DC and they want to be safe and they want to be able to go out and do the things that they need to do. And so DC needs to have the support and the financial support on the Hill from both sides of the aisle.
Thank you. Candidate May.
Some of my earlier points, and starting with the education part of it, I do believe that we have to take our message across the country and not just inform people as to our dilemma, but how they have skin in the game. The fact is that denying DC residents representative democracy also denies those senators that everyone needs to pass legislation we'd all like to see passed. I think to boycott would be another thing that we could lead. There are people that are recognizing our dilemma and the significance of it. Somewhat like Ukraine, if we don't put up enough fight, a lot of people won't see why it's important to them either, and they'll be okay with letting it persist. I think if we boycott, for instance, cars from Kentucky, that's one of their major exports. There are a lot of things that we purchase or trade, and there's no reason to do it when we have other options. If those companies or states send representatives that are hostile to representative democracy for DC. But ultimately, I think these have to go through the courts because, again, what we're looking for is a perfect storm that ends with a Senate that clearly doesn't even advocate for representative democracy for the country. So trying to get this through a political structure when actually these are constitutional violations, I think the latter is the best direction.
Candidate Patterson.
Thank you. I love this question for the simple fact I get to do a little history teaching real quick, is that you mentioned in the course of this question about the Senate taking a vote. And I want you to know, and everyone who's on here, all our Delta sisters, is that when this first occurred in March, before all the performative videos and marching up to the Capitol Hill and everything like that, me and another representative from the State Board of Education brought 700 parents and children to the Senate. And we sat there and we visited offices and we took kids and we put a face on that $1.1 billion that they were taking and robbing from our budget. And that's how Susan Collins from Maine actually started calling for that vote that the Senate was taking. This is not about being performative and making videos and everything like that. This is about action. And as your next delegate, that's the one thing that I'm going to make sure that we do, because I take it very seriously when things like this happen and what it means for the everyday child and family when you take $1.1 billion from a budget that you can't do anything with because it's local tax dollars. So I'm pushing for, as your next delegate, I will be on the oversight committee. We will never have this oversight of this particular language that needs to be in every single budget, because I'll work with the other council members that are on here right now and their colleagues and with the mayor and the chairman to make sure that we're always coordinated on this issue.
Thank you. Thank you. Candidate Pinto.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you, Jock, for your effort and efforts to make sure that those messages were told. I think that is extremely important. And what we saw was unjust. And what ended up happening in the House, it was basically 5 Freedom Caucus members who have such a disregard and disrespect for our city that they weren't swayed by President Trump by Speaker Johnson, by our oversight chair, James Comer, all of whom agreed that the budget should be restored. And so those 5 members, we need to be advocating for candidates who are running against them very aggressively, because they have it out for us. And we need to focus our political efforts there. Let me just say on our budget, what we did do is we did what we always do in the city, which we are dealt cards that are imperfect, and we figured out a way to work with it, whether that was hiring freezes, whether that was creative accounting mechanisms to make up for some of that accounting. And then what we did when we passed the budget is I asked my colleagues for an emergency meeting for our second vote. And even though we didn't have additional projections, we made a list of contingency budgets for pay equity, for DNA testing in our lab, in our crime lab, for childcare, to say we need to expand these services if the budget has the additional money for it. And it did. The CFO just projected that we have the money to pay for all of that contingency list. And so I raised that as an example that we have to do everything we can to fight. And when we're dealt such a bad hand that we have to navigate, we need to determine a plan B so that the very real needs of our residents can be met.
Thank you. Thank you. Candidate ready?
Yes, thank you. So on the DC budget, we definitely need to build a firewall of congressional allies to block future budget interference. We're going to have to work on both sides of the aisle to make sure that can happen. We need to push for permanent legislative protections for DC's local budget autonomy to make sure, things like that don't happen. And then the public pressure, just like Mr. Peterson, what you've done, we need to sit there and work with our coalition of different actors to sit there and make sure that we can get what we want to get. For example, if we need to sit there and work with CVS and have CVS use their political allies to sit there and talk to certain congressional members, do it. If we need to talk to McDonald's and sit there and say, hey, what they're doing for our budget is going to have a negative impact on your sales and how you're operating within the city, we need to have them go and talk to our congressional legislators to get those issues solved. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate White?
Thank you for this question. Last Wednesday, Congresswoman Grijalva from Arizona was sworn into Congress 50 days after her constituents elected her. I texted her that morning ahead of her swearing in to congratulate her on finally being sworn in, and I said how sad it made me that for 50 days, her constituents, American citizens, were left without a voice in Congress. And I asked her to remember the 700,000 residents of the District of Columbia who have been without full voting representation for 50 years. She said she'll remember us, and I'll continue to build up our defenses with allies in Congress. Now, last March, when Congress stole $1 billion of our money, I didn't just get mad, I started working. I led the mayor, council, and Congresswoman Norton's office in coming together to fight back as a unified voice, using a strategy that I remember from when I worked in Congresswoman Norton's office of pulling these leaders together. It helped us capture the nation's attention and make sure that the nation understood that Congress didn't take their money, they took our money. I pulled our leaders together in a press conference that I didn't speak at. That's what leadership looks like, and that's the type of leadership we need in our congressional seat.
Thank you. Candidate Williams?
Thank you, Shelby, again. We may be out of power, but we still have power. Like Jacques said, I was a part of a team that went up to the Hill and presented to the senators, presented to the House of Representatives, and we made sure that they recognized that 700,000 residents of the District of Columbia were not sitting down, were not sitting back, and we were going to come with a force and come with a fight. And so what we still need to do, again, is home rule, strengthening home rule. Once we can do that, and as we do that, we can then obtain budget autonomy, which will then allow us to make sure that we can hold our budget and keep our budget and keep it strong. And like I think one of the other members, panelists said, being on the right committee is going to help us do that. So being on government oversight, being on appropriations, where anything that comes through that committee I will be there sitting to make sure I can not only fight against anything that's coming to disrupt our government, our budget, and our budget autonomy, but also I can make sure I introduce legislation and bills to make sure that we can pass that so we don't have to worry about this again. Again, making sure that we have home rule and strengthening that is the key to everything else that we're going to do in the District of Columbia. And we'll have to do that in the process of being able to strengthen home rule so that we don't have to worry about these people up on Congress, up on the Hill, trying to take away our votes, trying to take away our legislation, trying to take away our budget. The 5 members that Brooke Pinto talked about, we need to get rid of them. Absolutely, we need to rally. We need to get out into those districts and make sure that we can do something about it. But what we can't do something about it, we need to make sure we coalesce against those who are in those committees and make sure we get the budget autonomy we need.
Thank you. For the sake of time, we're going to go to our Q&A. We have some very good questions solicited here, provided to us. And so we will go there now. One of the
Good
questions.
Oh,
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm just asking the questions that are in the Q&A. And I'm going to start with this question since we're talking about statehood. And this one question from Barbara Hatcher: what is one federal policy outside of statehood that you believe uniquely harms DC residents, and how will you address it? Do you want me to select the candidate? Candidate White?
Thank you. I was hoping you would ask me that question. The biggest thing that hurts DC outside of statehood is our lack of budget autonomy. Our local dollars raised, by local taxes, funding local issues, has to go through Congress for their approval of how we spend our money. That is incredibly anti-democratic. It is also harmful. I was one of Congresswoman Norton's lead staffers on this issue, and this is where we get restrictions on spending our money on abortion for women with low income, restrictions on taxing marijuana, restrictions on needle exchange in a time when DC was in an HIV epidemic. So this is the biggest issue outside of statehood impacting DC, and it's one that we absolutely have to fix because it affects the health and welfare of the people in our city.
Jack?
Yes,
Patterson.
I appreciate the budget autonomy, which is important, but I believe one of the other biggest issues that is facing us is the total dismantling of the U.S. Department of Education, because that basically affects our children's future, our ability to be able to live in this city. And the biggest thing that I would do is to make sure that we rebuild the U.S. Department of Education, along with the Civil Rights Office, which has totally been underfunded and dismantled, and also for special education and their programming. What has been done there is a travesty. What I propose to do, and I'm doing at the State Board of Education, is putting forth a resolution that I hope that my council colleagues will also adopt, is that a public education, a quality public education, is a civil right. Just like other states with their constitution protects the right to a great public education and the future of their children in their city, that is something I'll be putting forward to make sure that we address that just as much as we're attacking and addressing budget autonomy.
Okay, thank you. I think the next person was, I think it's Kenny. And then following that, Kelly Williams, Deidre Brown, and Greg May.
Those were great answers. I think they're at the top of the list. The third that I would add is the Medicaid cuts. So nearly half of DC residents depend on Medicaid and SNAP. If they go through with the Medicaid cuts that they have threatened, that they have passed, I don't know how our hospitals are going to stay open. The House leadership has been saying it's rural hospitals that are going to close. It's our hospitals that are going to close. At Children's National, one of the gems of DC, 50% of the patients rely on Medicaid. So I think that's a top policy issue we've got to reverse.
Kelly Williams.
Thank you. I agree that budget autonomy is probably one of the key, but also certainly housing. If we don't address our housing crisis and the issues that we're facing in housing, our residents won't have any stability to even think about anything else. Knowing that when I was homeless, that I could not, trying to take care of my son, once I was able to get stable housing, then I could think about everything else did need to do in life. But until that stability is set, that framework and that groundwork, the basic ability to live, in peace and safety and comfort, we can't do anything. And certainly with housing, we need to change our AMI so people can afford to live in our city because it's unaffordable right now. And unfortunately, our housing committee has not provided effective affordable housing. And we need to be able to do that. Changing the AMI will do that because now our AMI are based on the 8 wards of DC, not 5 counties in Maryland and 5 counties in Virginia. So that's one thing that I think is major outside the budget autonomy is making sure our residents can live safely and securely, and we don't have a homeless crisis or we don't have an affordability crisis that we have right now, because clearly DC is unaffordable for us right now.
Thank you. Deidre Brown.
Thank you for the question. Of course, we all agree that DC should have budget autonomy, but the one thing that I haven't heard anyone mention is the fact that we do not have control over our federal criminal justice system. Unlike other jurisdictions in the country, DC does not control its own courts, parole decisions, prosecutors, even the structure of its correction system. As you know, Congress has the power to overturn local criminal justice laws like they're doing right now, block needed reforms, and prevent us from modernizing our systems. This creates delays in justice, limits our ability to expand diversion programs, and undermines the reforms our residents voted for. As delegate, I will push for the full local control of our justice system, including returning oversight of the DC courts, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the Parole Commission to the district. I will continue, as I have been for the last few weeks, fighting against the amendment, the rider that's in Congress right now that would take away our AG, because we have the right to decide about our AG and what our criminal justice system looks like. Public safety is a local issue, and DC should have the power to govern its own justice system, just like every other community in America. Thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate
Robert.
Matthews on this last question.
Thank you. I think we don't have to look very far. It's going to be healthcare. That's actually something that impacts every single person here in this virtual forum, and it will impact DC residents. Even with the current fight of extending the ACA tax credits, if they are not extended before December 31st, you will see all of our premiums quadruple. And so I don't know if you all been paying attention, but even with the crisis around SNAP, I have never seen schools and churches where there's just lines that are just wrapping around people trying to get food assistance in the United States of America, right? And so just think about, if they can't afford healthcare, what makes you think they're going to be able to afford food? They're all interconnected. And so I do know that I'm the only candidate in this race who've actually run programs like SNAP and Medicaid in the state of Tennessee for 95 counties. And so what it will take is a candidate on the Hill who understands the policy, but who understands how it affects people on the ground as well.
Thank you. This will be our last question before we go to 1-minute closing statements each.
Each question, does everyone respond to each question?
No, it's random.
There's
Our
one
final
question.
Q&A question.
Okay. There is one question, and there's so many, and so what I am going to recommend is that we will capture all of the questions and send them to each of the candidates and ask you to respond, and we will send them to those who are on tonight, who are online tonight. This question has to do with our seniors. And it says, and it's talking about, well, maybe let me see, maybe That might be one of the questions. This has to do with housing. And it starts off with an intro saying that the housing stock in DC has led to widening inequity, not only in terms of affordability, but also in terms of accessibility. And this is Angela White. And she states that this is also happening in other areas of the country. And her question is, what legislation would you champion that requires developers of any current or future housing stock receiving local or federal tax credits, benefits, loans, etc., that will ensure that all of their units, homes, or development sites meets the criteria for affordability, accessibility, and visibility.
Candidate May?
I think we need to reconsider how we actually think about our government and why it's so dysfunctional, generally speaking. I think some of the fundamentals are that we're talking about necessities being in a for-profit model. I think that is the part that needs to be addressed because left in a for-profit model, we recognize that monopolies are not good as individual companies, but there are industries that can become monopolistic because they are essential. We just boil this frog so slowly that we really have a hard time recognizing it. But over time, the monopolistic aspect of having, say, healthcare in a solely for-profit system will crush the competition of non-essentials. That is why the cost of living keeps going up. I believe what we actually need is competition from our government. It is, if it's a Democratic government, we should consider it to be an employee-owned business. And in that, with that idea, we should be purchasing certain things wholesale instead of retail. And if we did that, we could add the competition needed so that those necessities are brought under control. And but nothing works if the rest of the government doesn't work. So I think removing the top of this government that is ineligible since January 6th would be the place to start because nothing else can get done if the top of the government is corrupt.
Candidate Brown? You're muted.
There we go. Thank you for this question. As a housing advocate, this is really important to me. I am fully committed to championing federal legislation that requires any developer receiving local or federal tax credits, subsidies, or loans to meet strong standards for affordability, accessibility, and visibility. Right now, too much of the affordable and accessible housing in DC is concentrated in areas with fewer resources, fewer amenities, and fewer opportunities. That inequity is by design, not by accident. This is why I helped draft a zoning resolution that actually I'll be presenting to the Zoning Commission next month that just passed with the Ward 3 Democratic Committee, which demands deeper affordability, true sliding scale of income levels, and equitable access to new housing opportunities, not only in Ward 3, but in other areas in Rock Creek West. We've made it clear that affordability and inclusion must be requirements, not suggestions, especially in high opportunity neighborhoods that have historically excluded Black and Brown families. As delegate, I would take that same approach to the federal level by tying federal financing tools like the Low Income Housing Tax Credit and HUD's lending programs to universal design standards, visibility and multi-tier affordability across all wards, not just neighborhoods east of the river. Housing that is affordable, accessible, integrated into thriving, resource-rich communities is not a luxury, it's a civil rights issue, and it must be the national standard.
Thank you. Candidate Patterson?
Yes, this is near and dear to my heart for the simple fact that I was born and adopted. I was a foster child, and I was adopted by two elder individuals. And I'm so thankful that they took me and raised me. But I do know when it came to housing, our housing in which we stayed, we had to get supplements from other individuals my adopted siblings to help us make the rent. And so for me, the reason why this is so important is because as elderly folks, we cannot charge them more than what their Social Security or what their SSI benefits allow them to be paid. I would push legislation that keeps rent payments, mortgages underneath their 20% of their actual SSI or their Social Security benefits, for the simple fact that's all that they have at that particular time. And 9 times out of 10, it does not match the inflation rates or some of the rates that make housing almost impossible for them to have. So again, I will push legislation that no more than 20% of their income at SSI, Social Security, would be charged for housing.
Thank you. We're now going to move to closing statements due to our limited time constraints. This has been a very robust discussion, and we appreciate your well thought out answers. We'll move to closing statements now in order. Candidate Brown.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me tonight. I just want to reiterate, I'm running for Congress because DC deserves a fighter who understands our struggles, not from a briefing book, but from lived experiences. I'm a 3rd-generation Washingtonian, a mother of Black children living in this city, a woman who has navigated the school systems, the housing systems, safety challenges, and this constant fight for dignity. I've led in our communities. I've led with housing organizations, Ward 3 Democrats, as well as zoning organizations. And I've stood up for families in all 8 wards. I know the stakes. Tonight, you heard a clear vision. DC deserves full control of our future, our budget, our justice system, our housing, our schools, and our safety. Until we get statehood, we need a delegate who will not bend the knee to Congress, but stand up to it. Someone who will protect our seniors. Thank you so much, and I look forward to talking to you later.
Candidate Freeman.
Yes, I will take the time to try to address some of those questions that we have. The person that posed the question about housing, they need to know that the housing stock is actually an artificial intelligence. It's not real. It's man-made. We need to ban the equity firms, private equity firms from home ownership who are artificially driving up those prices. That's that. And then we also have HUD that has a guideline that says that no one should be paying more than 30% of their income in housing. That should be a law. And in terms of budget autonomy, is truly the second most important issue of facing district residents. Because when I had the Black Love Festival, when the National Council of Negro Women lost the Black Family Union, we became the largest AIDS mobilization because DC had 12 times the AIDS infection rate. Why?
Thank you.
Because
Candidate Freeman, we're running out of time and we have to
I'm
move to the
sorry, I had
next
enough
one.
time
Thank you.
to wrap that up. But the thing is that
Candidate
I'm
Matthews.
freemanforcongress.com. They got more information
Excuse
on
me,
that. And thank you
Candidate
for having
Freeman,
me.
we have to move forward. Thank you. Candidate
Thank you for having me.
Matthews.
Okay, thank you all so much for this convening. Here's very quick for me. I have a very diverse set of skill sets that I believe would make me the best suited to go to the Hill. I have worked for both Democratic and Republican administrations in the state of Tennessee, as well as in Maryland, as well as Washington, D.C. So you're going to need someone that's able to build a bridge on both sides of the aisle. I believe in terms of all of the issues that affect Washingtonians, as well as our citizens in the United States around health and human services, healthcare, SNAP, all of those programs I've had the opportunity to run and oversee. So again, I'm here to just ensure that those who are most vulnerable are those that are most supported. And I believe I'm the best one to go to the Hill to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate May.
Yes, thank you. I want to just remind everyone that what I'm really focusing on is less the upcoming election and more of what Americans are asking for, and that is a solution to the lawlessness that we're experiencing currently. I do believe there's a risk in waiting for another year, worse 3 years, to address this, because in the end, if we don't have a functional government, DC statehood is not something that can be achieved, but it could be if we fix the current problem. So I ask everyone to visit Demand the Clear Plan and work primarily on removing are impediment to everything that we want to have happen.
Thank you. Candidate Patterson.
First and foremost, I want to thank the woman Sigma Gamma. Why am I'm having such a problem right now? I want to thank you guys for having me this evening. I really appreciate just the intention in which you did this. This is a very crucial time for us in politics. The delegates sets the tone for the District of Columbia. It may not have a vote on the floor at this current time, but the story of the District of Columbia originates to the rest of the country from this particular seat. It is so important that we pick someone with a lived experience in this city, didn't just arrive here, doesn't just look at this as a political seat, but looks at this as a fight for the District of Columbia and telling the story of why we deserve statehood in this nation. It is incumbent that we pick the right candidate foremost and more than anything else at this particular time. So I want to thank you this evening for allowing us to come before you and for the continued support that I look forward to working with you and your sorority.
Thank you. Candidate Pinto.
Well, thank you so much to all the Deltas for having us tonight and for your continued engagement. It's so great to have your voice and perspective in the city. And I really hope I can have your support in this race. You know, as we are at this very pivotal time for the city, the number one thing that is in the talking points circulating amongst Democratic allies in the House and the Senate are literally all of my bills over the last several years. My public safety legislation, Secure DC, Peace DC, the juvenile curfew, the raise in MPD pay. These are the initiatives that are protecting the district right now from people who are seeking to undermine our autonomy. And so I have credibility on public safety that is very important in this moment to get us through this time period. And I'm eager to continue my efforts to fight for the city that we love, to support our families and our economy. And I ask for your support.
Thank you. Candidate Reddy.
Sorry, something popped on the screen. Well, yes, once again, thank you for hosting us. I'm actually once again running for our U.S. Shadow Representative, which will be supporting the delegate in any way possible, pushing out statehood, working for partnerships across the aisle with different organizations, working with our small businesses, just working with anyone that we can possibly work for to get statehood, to get additional federal funding for our city in any way, shape, or form. I'm here to represent us and work with DC. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate White.
Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated, thank you for hosting this important forum. I know, like you know, that this moment matters. We feel it because our city is under attack, our values are under attack, our families are under attack. And in the first transition of power in this seat in 35 years, right now, we need someone who is 10 toes down in DC, someone who understands the power of that seat, someone who has lived the struggles of the families in DC. I am running not because it was my plan or intention to run, but because that's where the fight is, and I want to go to the fight for our city. So I'm asking again for your vote, for your support, and for you to get involved with me after the primary because we have work to do. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Candidate Williams.
Thank you, Delta Sigma Theta. I appreciate tonight and certainly want to applaud you guys for putting this on tonight. But I'm focused. I'm focused on the three things I talked about: healthcare, housing, and home rule. And I think, as Jock said, you need someone in this seat that has the lived experience. I think Robert said it too. I have the lived experience in this city, being homeless, taking care of my mother, having to, navigate what we'll have to do in terms of where we would live. Fight and has a lived experience, the values that you carry, the convictions that you have. That person is me, and that's the only person that's in this race that's going to come to this the Hill with lived experience and understanding how to deal with members of Congress. Having worked at every level of government, 25 years of experience, I'm the one on this panel that can do just that. And if we want to continue to have missed opportunities that we've had with the council and in Congress. We cannot afford to keep putting the same people in office that are the responsible for the fact of why we missed this now. So I'm the one for you. Please go to Kelly Michael for DC. I look forward
Candidate
to
Zelezny.
and help.
Thank you so much for this forum and the evening. I'm asking for your vote for DC Delegate because I am the only one in this race who has both the local experience and the national relationships and national networks to deliver for DC from day one. I have a vision for this job that is bigger than what it has been in the past. The delegate role can perform on the Hill, and we've talked about how. But the delegate should also perform beyond the Hill. This is a job for a convener, for a coalition builder who can bring national business interests, national foundation interests, and the best cutting edge thinking, resources, people, and ideas to DC. I'm the only one who has been operating on a national stage for 30 years. I have lived in this city that whole time. I have raised 4 kids here. I love this city and I can't stand what's happening to it. I will fight for this city with the skills, the experiences, and the relationships that are needed to deliver results for DC on day one.
Thank you to all of our candidates for your closing statements.
All right. Well, we've run out of time. This has been a very engaging conversation, and I really want to thank all the panelists. I want to thank all our guests and audience members who were engaged in asking questions. And sorry that we could not get to all of them, but we will ask our audience to please stay on after we end the program because we have a survey that we would like you to take the time to fill out, and also some resources for you, which includes the candidates' bios and other information about how to reach them. So thank you very much, everyone. This ends the program. Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thanks so much.